So I've been talking a lot about ego and the need to question, the obligation almost that we have to question and challenge ourselves. And I positioned it as a question, an interesting, really profound question to ask ourselves in the spirit of doing that, of like, what am I wrong about right now? And I did a video about that and why that's such an interesting question, because we're almost asking an impossible question to see a blind spot that we have. How could we know if we were wrong? If we knew we were wrong about it, we would change it. So there's things right now that we're wrong about, and just the acceptance of that being so important. And I think that's true. I wonder though, if that's not enough. I can be cynical, I think, pessimistic, maybe, in some ways. Maybe I'm just a realist, maybe I'm cynical, I don't know. But I think the philosophy I'm forming over time here is a cynicism and a skepticism about human nature and who we are and what we are. Maybe the better question to ask, aside from what am I wrong about right now, is how am I an asshole right now? And I get some people don't like cursing, but sometimes a curse word is the word that's most appropriate and gets the point across the most. I think in some ways we have to question that about ourselves. And that's an uncomfortable thing, right? Particularly in today's world, for good reason. There's a big push on self-love and vulnerability and caring for ourselves and not being too hard on ourselves. And there are a lot of people that suffer, that do feel really bad, and they do think they're worthless. And it's not that. Like, you shouldn't feel that way. It's not to say you individually are the problem and you should feel bad about yourself and you're not good enough. It's not necessarily saying that, but it is, for all of us, an acceptance that we are all assholes. And by assholes, I mean, maybe a nicer way to put it, or a more poetic way to put it, whatever, is like, we're all selfish. And that, again, has a connotation where people are like, I'm not selfish. Like, and even broader for society, like, if you say everybody's selfish, you're the problem. Like, you have a negative view on humanity in the world. Look at all the beauty in the world. Look at all the amazing things, big and small, that we do for each other. And again, I'm not trying to suggest that that is the complete absolute story, that we are all assholes and selfish, and that's the story. Like, there's no goodness in it. There is goodness, of course. Of course, we're decent, I think, at our core. Decent. I wouldn't say we're good. I'd say we're decent at our core, which means we have the capability for good, and we exhibit that often. But we also have a very strong capability to be assholes, to be selfish. And I think that acceptance, that realization, is an important one. And that's the key piece of it. I'm not saying it's just to be provocative or be like, a catchy little thing. How are we assholes? How are you an asshole? I'm saying it because I think it actually matters. I think if we don't like the idea of people being assholes, if we don't like the idea of people being inherently selfish, if we don't like the negative, the suffering in the world, I think we have a couple choices of how to handle that. We could just focus on the good and say the goodness, right? Be grateful, focus on the positive. And there's benefits to that, right? We can look at it that way. We can convince ourselves that humans are inherently good and we just have to figure it out, right? Or we can go the other direction, which I think I'm leaning more towards. We can be honest with ourselves. We can accept and acknowledge and be aware of the fact that we are all assholes. We are all selfish. And I've talked about this before. It gets to a little bit of the concept of, like, not that I'm particularly religious or necessarily that I think the stories are true, but the story of Adam and Eve and original sin. I have a belief that when we gained consciousness, that ignited and triggered something in us that where we couldn't help but be selfish. Every animal that walks this earth, every plant for that matter, is trying to grow, to thrive, to survive, right? That means finding a meal and eating. That's the thing they need to do. That's good for them. They need that. We are driven. The life force in us drives us towards those things. Once you layer consciousness on top of that, and you become aware of the fact that there is good and bad, that these things are good, and I want those things, and I can have more of those things, and I can create a situation where I get more of that, it's almost impossible to think that we wouldn't be selfish. It's impossible. So we have to accept that idea that we are all inherently selfish. That how am I an asshole? How am I an asshole right now? Because I am an asshole right now in certain ways. And here's the big piece. My goal isn't to become not an asshole. My goal isn't to say, all right, I figured out all the ways I am an asshole or selfish, and now I'm going to fix them all. Because I don't think we can do that. I don't think we're capable of it. That's that rosy, optimistic view that I think is very nice and would be great if it was true, but it actually hurts us more than it helps us. What's much more useful, I think, is just being aware that I'm an asshole and trying to catch those moments, trying to find where like, oof, I'm being a real asshole there. Like I'm really having an impact on people. I'm really causing suffering in this way and I need to stop that. But it's only once you acknowledge and admit that you are that you can catch it and have a chance of doing anything about it, or at least just being aware of it and trying to adjust for it a little bit. You're never going to fix it completely. I think that's the game. That's got to be the game. That's why the questioning. That's why the challenging. So we can figure that out. But it all has to be built on a foundation and a belief that we're all assholes, that we're all capable of that. And it's a spectrum, of course. Some people are worse. Some people are better. I get that. And for the people that might think like, no, that's the wrong view. We're not all assholes. I'm a good person. There's good people out there. I would challenge it. I have to challenge it. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I don't know anything for certain. Is it possible that there is true altruism and goodness and somebody that is never selfish in any way? Possible, but to me, it's unlikely, right? And it's just, if you follow the thread long enough, you see our selfishness play out. Simplest example, I'm recording this video on an iPhone. I am aware, right? Have I been there? Do I know all the facts? No, but I'm aware of what it takes to make this iPhone, of potential child labor or other things, bad conditions for people that make it in different countries. I'm aware of that. Yet I'm talking to you on this iPhone. I'm recording on this iPhone. And I'm making this video because I want the world to be a better place. I think maybe this philosophy, philosophical thinking, questioning is going to help the world. Yet at the same time, I'm doing it on an iPhone that I know is causing pain and suffering. And you could look at any number of examples that illustrate that. If you look at your life and you look at what you're willing to do and the things you do in your life, inevitably at the end of some of those threads is you being selfish. You choosing your own comfort, joy, happiness, whatever you want to call it, over somebody else's. That's what we do. That's what we do. And we have to accept that in ourselves. We have to accept the fact that that's inherent in us. And then maybe we can do something about it. And my fear is if we don't question enough, if we don't challenge enough, naturally, that selfishness, that assholeness, if you will, allows us to spin stories and create illusions for ourselves that tell us like, no, it's all good. It's okay that I'm talking on this iPhone. It's okay that I'm doing these things. And I'm not idealistic. It's not that I think I could snap my finger and fix all this and all right, we'll just stop using iPhones. We'll stop doing this. Again, that's not the point. I wish it could be, but the point isn't to fix it all. The point is just to be honest and aware with ourselves, to question enough to be honest and aware so that we can try and find those instances to reduce suffering as best we can. It's not a nice story necessarily, but it doesn't have to be a bad story. If we can be honest, if we can embrace and accept this, maybe there is a better way. But I think we have to go through that fire to get there. I get why we don't want to. I get why the nicer story is nicer, why it's much better to assume we're all good and we can figure this out and we can do it and we can feel good about ourselves the whole time. Unfortunately, no, I don't think we can. We have to swim in the mud a little bit and the discomfort and the pain of, what am I capable of? What am I doing right now? How am I an asshole right now? Because I am. That's the path to figure it out.